Today on HTO Football, we welcome Gerwyn Griffiths. Gerwyn is the U23's head coach in the British Army. Gerwyn discusses transferable skills between the military career and his burgeoning coaching career. He looks at leadership in football and what it means in the modern day. Enjoy.
Gerwyn, welcome to HTO Football. It's a pleasure to have you on. How are you? You well?
Yeah, all good here. How are you boys, all right?
Yeah, keeping well. Yeah, we had just a massive storm earlier for about half an hour, non-stop bucking it down. Just managed to get home safely in the car, so yeah.
Treacherous roads. But yeah, well, thank you, very well, thank you.
Yeah, good stuff.
How have things been, obviously, in recent weeks? The frustration, I guess, is over, back on the grass, doing your coaching?
Yeah, so it's been a massive pause, isn't it? I think we're all massively missing football, and it's good to see it back on the box. And for me, I'm back coaching sort of small groups, one-to-one stuff, and I'm loving it, to be fair. And the Premier League has got some big score lines as well, which shows that some have been more prepared than others. So yeah, it's been interesting.
Yeah,
absolutely. If we may, just to give the listeners a little bit of background, it'd be great if you could just give a little bit of an overview as to your sort of love affair with football, where it began, and obviously ultimately how that dovetailed with your career in the military.
So I grew up in a little town in mid Wales called Tywyn, back end of Beyond, to be honest, and that's where football started for me, like most boys and girls. Just playing local football, and then I got to an age, sort of teenage age, started playing sort of centre of excellence, travelling quite a bit, represented the North Wales regional squad. Kind of just missed out on the national squad selection, and was with my local team. Went into adult football, played in Tier 2 in the Welsh football, and then joined the army at 16. And then I didn't have a clue what I was getting in for in the army, and luckily the army's massive into sports, and I was given the opportunity to play football at sort of grassroots in the military, and then worked my way up and represented the army under 21s, and then into the senior team, and it's amazing actually what the army's given me in terms of travel. I've been in many places across the world just playing football on football tours in the army, and I play football and coach football weekly. So it's amazing actually that the opportunity I've had through the army in football.
I guess you've developed a lot of skills over the years, Gerwyn, that's been transferable into the football game from the army.
Yeah, so I think the biggest ones that the army promote with sport, and it's massively encouraged in the army. If it's very similar to like a college or a university program where there's a set afternoon on a Wednesday for the whole of the army to be given the opportunity to play sport if the unit tempo allows. And I think the main things that every sportsman learns from that is the values that the army hold. The team spirit, leadership skills, problem solving, all the team ethic and stuff that underpins the British Army's values. So that's what I've learned massively on the field and off the field. I've been a captain on the field, and that's transferred well into my sort of managerial roles in the army, and more now I've gone into coaching a bit more in depth as a head coach, and I'm definitely reaping in the benefits in my work environment as well, sort of creating successful teams.
I mean that communication, I suppose, that you mentioned as well is a key one, isn't it? We were talking to Tom Perez the other day from Football Beyond Borders, the charity that we support, and we were talking about that trust that coaches need to have between themselves and the player, and if you haven't got that trust in the individuals you're working with, it's a huge part of the game at the moment, isn't it? I think. Yeah,
and very similar to how you probably imagine the army as well. It is all about communications. You have to talk up and down and side to side with your peers as well. So football is no different, and I think the most successful teams have nailed that communication, that there's sort of transparency throughout, and the players have got that relationship that they can talk to the staff and vice versa. So communication is key in football, massively.
Yeah, I was reading an article the other day. Actually, I think it was from a while back. But Harry Redknapp was talking at the time. I think when he was at Southampton, I think, and he was saying about how on the football coach, like when they're travelling to away games, all the players are now like headphones in, playing their games. And he said, you know, the only time you actually communicate with your players deeply is on the training pitch. Everything else, it's all they're wired up. They're in their own world, you know, on social media, or they're just listening to their music. And I think that's probably a big challenge, isn't it, for coaches in the modern world?
Yeah, and I think the coaches that are letting the players have that time are the ones that are evolving with the game, are doing probably better, because society's changed massive. And I think the leading coaches nowadays are the ones that are up to scratch with the modern ideas and understanding the players and the society a bit more. I think the man managers, the ones that are still trying to rebel against it and try and stop them having that time, stop them having the social media contact, are going to have troubles, I think, trying to adapt.
Do you find, talking about that time and that escapism piece, do you find a lot of your players, how competitive does it get ultimately, in terms of, do they use their Wednesday afternoon or whatever slot they've got for sport and on the football pitch and training, do they use that as a little bit of light relief from a tough week? Or actually, you know, how competitive does it get? Or actually they're going out there and kicking lumps out of each other and being more aggressive on the field than in their day job?
Yeah, I think there's an element of stress release in there. I think, you know, any sport, you know, is great for the mental health of any sportsman. So getting out on the pitch for them is great. And for some at the grassroots level, it's just being out on the pitch, you know. And I think some of them are ingrained in that will to win, and I think the Army does ingrain that in you as well, where they just want to win regardless of what ability they are at. But I think the top end service football is very competitive, and we've had some service players go on to make it in the game full time. We've had one recently who won promotion with Swindon at League One, Tom Broadbent, and only a few years ago they were service players, and yeah, where it is a stress release. It's you know, it is, they want to concentrate on doing as well as they can as well.
Perhaps the modern coach is allowing these young players to have that escapism, whether it be watching Netflix on the way to a game or with their headphones in. Because I see some of these meetings that they go to now. I was watching the Dortmund Amazon Prime documentary, and that you see these clips where the team they're in like 2-hour meetings with 3 or 4 coaches and the psychologist, and they're talking about tactics, and everything is covered now, isn't it, in coaching? I think there's no stone left unturned, and I think that maybe players need that break, don't they, on their headphones, you know? Otherwise it could just get too much, couldn't it?
It's their time, isn't it? And if there's time where you want them to tune in and pay full attention, and in return you've got to give them that time slot of when they're switching off and really resting. Mentally as well as physically. Well,
I guess we sort of could move on to, I guess, how leadership looks at the moment with football managers, really. I mean, they're saying it's a lot more of a younger man's game now. Obviously, we're seeing, well, the dinosaur label sort of dying out, isn't it? These managers that we've come so accustomed in the Premier League, the Sam Allardyces of this world, the Kirbishleys, those sorts of managers. And then you can think of foreign like Capello and Trapattoni, those kind of almost dictators, really. The football manager looks a lot different now, don't they? The way they communicate, the way they work, and the way they lead, really. Obviously, Jurgen Klopp is the prime example at the moment, isn't he? They're being, you know, waxing lyrical, and rightly so. What are your views on how leadership has changed since you've grown up watching football to now, and how managers have evolved?
I think leadership is such a sort of varied term, really. Is you know, we look at these managers now that have got the titles, and arguably in Mourinho, when he first went to Manchester United, everybody thought, you know, they were going to run away with titles and all sorts, but actually he found it really difficult. Where you know, let's look at Frank Lampard, very junior into sort of management, did really well at Derby, and now continuing that in the Premier League with Chelsea. And obviously the transfer ban, he didn't have much scope to go and get the players he wanted. He actually got the best out of the squad that he inherited. So so leadership is tough, and I think in Lampard's case, I think he was just an absolute, great role model for the young players, and he absolutely squeezed every inch of potential out of them. And then you've got the other side of leadership, where you've got the dictator. You do as I say, and that's it, my way or the highway, and that worked. That's worked for many coaches and managers. But I think my version of leadership is everybody's got their own style. It's just getting the best out of the group, and that looks different for Alex Ferguson than it might do for Frank Lampard.
I think as well, growing up, I always used to think when a manager was linked with your club, you'd think, oh, what's his CV like? Where's he been? Like, where's he coached? What players has he coached? Whereas now, I mean, like the club me and Tom support, Mikel Arteta's never managed in his life before he joined the club. So it's, I think, and Lampard, like you said, very junior, in his role. And there's many more. I mean, obviously, I read today that Sol Campbell's been, yesterday released by Southend. Obviously, very short tenure there, and as well at Macclesfield as well. I mean, that's probably a different debate about young managers getting the right amount of time and stuff. But I do feel there's been a shift. I just think that maybe now there's the social media age that we live in. I think we're wanting charisma, aren't we? We're wanting that sort of persona instead of a CV.
Yeah, I think so, and I also think that perhaps they're moving towards a world where they're looking for people that they can relate to as well, both whether that be on the pitch or not, and actually have been there, done it, and actually maybe, and it'd be interesting to get your thoughts going in terms of what you believe players value in you as a coach. Is it someone who's going to come and bring structure, bring rigor, bring a bit of something to aspire to, or actually is it someone that's coming and actually just dotting the I's and crossing the T's and sewing some things together about some raw talent that they already have? Because do they need someone to lead stepping out front saying this is the way you need to go, or actually I'm here to support you in the way you want to go and the way you need to develop? Because for me that just seems to be the way that it's moving, and I think that's a positive change personally. But
yeah, I think my take is I've always tried to live by the phrase, players don't care what you know until they know how much you care. And I've seen that firsthand, that's so true, that you might not know everything, but if the players can see that you genuinely care about them, about the project that's in front of you, the team goals, the shared goals, and they're more inclined to buy in, and then they're more inclined to play for you. You know where you stand. Honesty, I think, is so key. I think if I'm gonna drop a player, it's the absolute reasons why I'm dropping the player. It's not to make excuses or to feed him, some stuff that I've made up just to make him feel good. It's the honest truth that today you're not on the starting lineup because this player is going to offer more, and we have a plan for you as a substitute. And then that way, I think they appreciate the honesty. They probably prefer that, because I think when you get live, I've been there as a player, the gaffer's telling you one thing and telling somebody something else, and it just doesn't quite line up. And then you don't really respect the gaffer as much there. So I think the two things is showing the players that you genuinely care about what you're in for, and honesty. And the shared goals, if you're all the staff, the kit man, the manager, the player, all the players are all in it for the same shared goals, then you're off to a cracker. I mean, you see on the sub bench, don't you? You're competing for that shirt. The two players in front of you might be ahead of you and you're disappointed, but you sat on the bench, but the goal goes in.
Yeah.
Look at the sub bench. Who are the ones?
Yeah, I know. I always think that's a really good indicator, actually, of a squad's harmony. When a goal goes in and you look at the bench and how the subs react.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I think managers aren't any softer. I don't think now. There's not. I know someone like a Capello was obviously like a very dictatorial, you do as I say approach. Van Gaal maybe that also, but I don't think Pep or Klopp or a Poch or Nagelsmann, I don't think these guys are any soft on their players. You know, that it's just as intense, but they're obviously doing a lot behind the scenes that we don't see, that we're seeing a bit more now with all these documentaries. But we're seeing they're obviously doing things that work behind the scenes to make them a little bit more, not likable, that's probably the wrong word, but not as they just don't come across as much of a dictator, do they, as the previous sort of the ones in the 80s and the 90s, really?
I think that's because they come across that they're in it together, and actually the struggles and the hardship and that the players are experiencing, the coaches are experiencing. And I think that's a really good point that Gerwyn made in terms of, you know, they're not putting themselves on a different pedestal to say, well, I need you to do this so we can achieve my aims. It's actually, what do we need to do as a group to achieve the group's aims? And I think in a way, therefore, without blowing too much smoke up your backside going, it must be really interesting to see how much that togetherness and those qualities, I imagine, which are rife in the army, because ultimately that's, you know, what you do on a daily basis is working together, actually really therefore transfers into some really good football teams and some good camaraderie, probably maybe more so in terms of camaraderie and team spirit than if you went to some of these junior football clubs, because actually you are in it together on a daily basis, living, breathing together in the same space.
Yeah, and I think what people don't see as well is that there's some cracking coaches in the army, because they've had some great experiences in work. They've been in situations where they've had to manage, and they've got a passion for the game. And if they're doing well in the football game, they're doing that concurrent to a very demanding role as a British soldier. So I've got some of my friends are doing cracking work, and they're working in the sort of top end of the non-league, which is really tough, you know, to manage some of them players with high demands, maybe small budgets, and a lot of players are obviously attracted by money and the pay and stuff. But yeah, going back, there's some fantastic coaches going through the system at the minute.
It's always interesting to look at the coaches' backgrounds as well. I mean, I've always been quite interested with Rafa Benitez, being a teacher myself. He obviously taught before becoming a football manager.
If you could sort of have a bit of a masterclass and learn yourself from any other coaches out there at the moment, who would you want to sort of spend some time with, learn from, and gain from at the moment? Who would you love to work with? Who do you see out there? Do you think, you know what, I need a bit of that in my armoury?
I think I love the way Klopp works. I love the way Pep obviously goes about his sort of tactical business. But I love how Eddie Howe communicates with his players. I've read a lot about him and how he's sort of treated them and got the best out of them. And his journey's absolutely incredible. And I think people forget that Bournemouth are slowly forming into a quite established Premier League team now. And only 10 years ago they were sort of just getting into the football league.
Don't speak too soon, Gerwyn.
Yeah, I know. And
they're I worry about Bournemouth.
But
not as in the big picture as a club, but I think in the next few weeks they I mean, all of the teams down there can't get points at the moment, can they? That's the irony. They can't buy or win any of them. But no, I agree. I agree.
The fact that we'd be quite surprised if they went down this year, so it speaks volumes in terms of, you know, they have established themselves from, actually, if you look at the size of a club, you know, from nowhere really. They're not really a yo-yo club. If you look at like Hull did a very similar thing when they rose through, but then are always dropping down to solidify there. And Eddie being a previous player as well, you know, you said this sentence about, you know, knowing how much they care. You know, that's the bloke who cares about his club right there as well. So
I didn't realise they function off 80% of their budget is TV money. It's just madness.
And like you said there, you know, they are in trouble this year, and they could well possibly go down. But you know, for a manager to hold that role in the same club and go up through the leagues and be a Premier League manager and keep his job for so long is very rare. It's so rare these days. So I commend him for what he's done. And like you said, off of tiny budget in a tiny little club, you know, it's the smallest ground in the Premier League ever history. And fair play to him, and how he's got the best out of his players. I really do admire, to be fair.
Yeah.
So you sort of talk about budgets there, just sort of a curveball question in terms of what kind of investment is there for sports within the army? Like, do you know, in terms of equipment, things that you need to help develop your teams, I mean, like, are you working on shoestrings, or actually, if you put in a bit of a request to get X, Y, Z, new equipment or whatever, whether that be kit or whatever it looks like, is that, or are you literally getting all the old balls and pumping them up yourself and struggling?
No, we've got the army is runs well off sport, in the sense that it has so many benefits to soldiers. So there's an investment in sport in the army. So with that comes equipment, and comes with facilities and stuff like that. So we do play on some decent pitches, and certainly at sort of service level, there is a healthy budget there. There is sports lottery in the army. There is places where you can get funding. So it's very well looked after. We don't want, we promote sports, but at the same time, they have to have equipment that's playable with, and it is good. We've got some good sponsors on board with the army team, some big name sponsors who do really invest in us, and it's massively appreciated, to be fair.
Yeah, fantastic.
Mm. You've got a mentoring role as well with the FA, Gerwyn?
Yeah. So
enjoying that?
Yeah, love it. So I deal with the county of Wiltshire, and basically how that program works is that if there's any grassroots coaches that want any support, they can go through the Wiltshire FA, and that'll get filtered down to me, and I can offer any mentoring support in whatever capacity they want, whether that's a chat about anything, or a face-to-face chat about their philosophy, or CPD events. I've run some CPD events where you get some coaches in and we chat, or we go on the training ground and we look at what a session looks like. And it's great. It's great for them coaches. They've got free access to a local mentor in every county. So I think it's a great program. Great program.
Is there a common denominator with the requests you get, or is it quite varied?
A lot of coaches just want session ideas. Is probably the majority want. They just want sessions, and yeah, I mean, I've you got loads on the FA. The FA have got a future game system, so I can recommend them. But if I want them to know a bit more, then we can talk about sessions. We can design our own, so you can leave them going away, sort of sorting themselves out, really. And that's the aim, is make them self-sustainable, and obviously try and leave a legacy mentor in that club, where if I can work with a club, I want to identify the next mentor in that club, so I can move on to somebody else and kind of create mentors within the club.
Yeah, definitely.
Not retiring you just yet, because I imagine a few more years in the army, but is that an avenue you'd want to explore once you're done with the military, mentoring, or you the coaching, even taking that on a step, or do you think actually they're so entwined and dovetailed in your life, you're working the army and football, that actually when you sort of draw a line under one, you'll draw a line under both, maybe, that kind of thing?
No, I think it's definitely clear that the football is where my passion lies, and I think the career when I leave the army is certainly going to be in football. In what capacity, I don't quite know yet, but I love coaching and I love mentoring. So them avenues are definitely going to be wide open for me when I leave. And yeah, like I said, I'm just trying to figure out where I best see myself in the game, whether it's youth, adult, coach education, coach mentoring. Yeah, I don't quite know yet, but still, I'm not somebody who goes looking for the next thing. I don't look at the destination. I'm still enjoying the journey
In the moment, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not overly fast.
So currently, obviously, working at Yeovil Town, yeah?
Yeah, Yeovil Town Academy.
So at the moment, today, the news, obviously, the playoff final is August the 2nd, I think it is. Yourselves play my local team, Barnet. What are your thoughts for the rest of the season at Yeovil? What are they thinking? What's the aim do they fancy themselves? So
yeah, I mean, obviously every team going into that playoffs will be confident. It's a tough league, so they've done well to get to where they are. Barnet have obviously had a bit of a lifeline, finishing 11th and somehow getting into the playoffs.
Points per game, mate.
Points per game.
Best thing that was ever invented.
So yeah, I think it'll be wide open, but I think very similar to the football that we've seen since returning, it's that it's all about who's done the most preparation, because you saw a playoff final the other day between Exeter and Northampton, finished 4-0.
I know. When does that happen in a final?
That's rare that it happens in a playoff finals. Playoff finals, in my view, are Dean Windas's last minute winners.
Neil Shipley,
yeah, and it's
Bobby Zamora was the best one.
I remember.
Yeah, you're right. They're always they're incredibly tense affairs, and I always seem to think, watching them, and there's one mistake, just one mistake is so costly, isn't it?
46 games of when it comes to that final mistake, final second, and that's the fine margins.
Yeah, and I think what's weird with this, the National League as well, is that Premier League teams obviously got a few games to come back into, whereas Yeovil and Barnet, for example, you're jumping straight into a playoff
finals. Yeah,
it's very strange. I mean, they're probably. You normally go into a set of playoffs and you usually fancy the team that's got the momentum, but there is none of that, is there? So it's going to be interesting to see. Like you said, I think it's all just down to who's put in that extra training session, which could come up trumps,
And another thing, listening to the gaffer at Yeovil was that all the Loanees have kind of remained, and everybody who had injuries before the lockdown are fully fit. So it's kind of it's a nice position for some clubs to be in, because some of them, were fearing the back end of the season with injuries and stuff. But this is now, and the rewards are so high to get into the Football League. It's going to be really good to watch. And I think the way the playoffs work in the National League, with you have to play a playoff for the playoff. It's kind of whoever goes through will no doubt deserve it.
I'm not sure who I fancy, really. I think Notts County are my I'd go the same. I think I mean, they look like they were the team that were going to, but maybe 3 months later, who knows? Like you said.
Yeah.
I completely don't really watch non-league football that much. I'm going to confess I'm not an expert, so I'm definitely going to go Notts County, because I've got two wise chaps on the call that are saying the exact same thing, so I'd be silly not to. I mean, I could go for an outlier and go for Yeovil Barnet just to look good when it happens, but I'd be lying. So
someone has to vote for Barnet. Tom, just say it. Go on.
Yeah, Barnet definitely going to go up. That with that front line. I mean, I don't know. It's going to. Well, lockdown's finished, Gerwyn. So obviously now you're going to be having a big dinner party, and you're allowed 3 guests, dead or alive. We're going to flex the rules, dead or alive. Who are your 3 dream dinner guests? They can be childhood heroes, they can be current sports stars, current footballers, or current coaches. Who are you getting along for a bit of spot of dinner?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think always admired Steven Gerrard growing up as a kid. Fantastic player. Maybe he'd be in there if he was lucky. I guess Messi'd have to be in there.
Yeah.
And then probably thinking, I think Klopp would be quite a good guest at a dinner party.
Yeah, I think he would.
Becoming quite a popular choice, Tom, isn't he?
Yeah, be partying long into the night,
He needs to put all these dates in his diaries.
Yeah.
Well, and also I think he'd bring in a Premier League medal just to rub it in Steven Gerrard's face, didn't he? So because I'm a big fan of Steven Gerrard, but that's got to hurt a little bit. Do you mean when you've given so much to a club? Yeah. And I bet there's 10% of him that's quite jealous. I'm sure he's very happy that Liverpool have gone and done what they've done this year, but he must be thinking, God, that could have been me. I wish that was me. It must be hard when it's your boy club and you grow up, you captain it to such great success. You're a hero, you're a legend at the club. You're lifting the Champions League trophy, but everyone knows the title is what they wanted for so many years, and now they've done it. It's got to be a little bit salty.
And it's harsh as it sounds. It was like, maybe now looking at it, the missing piece was the investment in a central defender, a dominant centre defender that they maybe missed. And look at what they've done since Van Dijk's arrived.
Yeah,
I think that's a very astute point, actually, because they had top front lines in the last 15 years. They had Torres when Torres was phenomenal. They had Suarez when they went close. But actually, if you look at the investment they made, when they sold Coutinho, the money they ploughed in there was actually in a top keeper and a top centre half. And actually, don't get me wrong, Mane and Salah and, and Firmino, they're all great, but they didn't spend that much money on those players relative to the modern game. Actually, you look at Salah, there's a bit of a punt there after he failed at his time at Chelsea or didn't quite hit the ground running. Mane was a top player, but, he's taking a bit of a risk from Southampton. So can he make the step up? So actually,
what did Firmino cost as well? I mean,
next to nothing.
Yeah,
and the big investments were a centre back and a goalkeeper, and it transformed them, didn't it? Ultimately they turned the club's fortunes around.
Like you said there, it's clever business as well, because actually, yes, they paid big bucks for Van Dijk and the goalkeeper, but actually, if you look at the back line, including the goalkeeper, that money was sort of shared out in what they got Robertson and Trent for,
Well, Trent's basically through the academy, and Robertson was what, is it 8 million or something like that, or probably won a couple. Yeah, which is phenomenal business.
Gomez.
Yeah, and as Arsenal fans, you look at the money in the game, and sometimes you think, oh look, we wish we had an oligarch or whatever to throw loads of money, but we have spent a lot of money. Aubameyang 16 million, Lacazette 50 million, Pepe 72 million, Xhaka 34 million, Mustafi 34 million, Ozil 40 million. These players aren't cheap, but is it astute business? Is it what the areas of the pitch that the team needed to actually let them flourish? So I think
one of the reasons why Liverpool have stormed to the title so quickly this season is because City haven't been as secure at the back. I know Laporte was obviously out for a long period of time, and he's a wonderful, don't get me wrong, wonderful defender. But it's interesting, we're talking about leadership, and Vincent Kompany left, and maybe they're needing a new leader at the back there. Because although I'm a huge fan of Laporte, I think I'd put him alongside Van Dijk actually in the Premier League team, but he's not of Kompany. There's that leadership skill that he had. I mean, he's one of the greatest leaders that the Premier League's ever seen, and I think that maybe over the summer we're kind of in it now, but they'll be looking at potentially finding someone to play alongside Laporte.
Yeah,
I think
that's what you'll need to do, Gerwyn, is put in a request for just a sort of a 50-60 million pound budget to go and get yourself a centre half to join your teams. Do you know what I mean? Join the army teams. Just take a gig at the army. We'll pay you well, but we really need a centre back, the leader there. You never know. You say they're generous. Tell them to invest in sport. Give me a transfer budget like Man City's.
But yeah, it'd be quite interesting to ask you actually. Is there anyone in the Premier League at the moment you think what they could handle themselves like in an army setup?
Well, the army's changed a lot since I first joined.
Yeah,
18 years ago I first joined, and the army's changed a lot. But it's still you still need a bit about you in it, and it is tough. But going back to my original days, and obviously people before me would know that it was a real daunting place to be, going through basic training in particular, and I look at some of the Premier League teams. To not that I'm not answering your question, but if I'm thinking about it the other way, there's certainly a lot of players that I know could not hack a day in the army.
Very good answer.
Yeah. You see these kids now. They've had everything done for them. They would struggle in the army. They're more
debate. That's a podcast for another day, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great podcast for another day, though, because actually, I've always said this about football more than any other sport. It's not just the quantity they earn or whatever, because it's a private industry. So I'm never really against how much players earn, because actually, if I turn up, I go and pay my Arsenal season ticket, which is an extortionate amount. So if I'd stop doing that, if everyone else stopped doing that, guess what? Players wouldn't be paid as much. So I don't really ever mind how much they get paid, but it's just that model coddle nature, the fact that a club does everything for them, if it's whether it's transport, flights, booking, gyms, PR, all of that kind of stuff, the club can just sort out. And it's just so different to reality, but even other sports. If you're a tennis player or golfer, you still have to book your own travel, you book your own coach team, you book your own medical team, you still have to be running your own life, and you might get someone to help you do that. But with football at the top level, it's crazy how they literally have to do nothing other than focus on the performance.
Well, we spoke about the problem-solving skills earlier, didn't we? Maybe that's a chronic issue, in the game at the moment. These managers like Pep, for example, they look like they are solving every single problem during a match. And our players, I don't know, Gerwyn, are players, is their communication on the pitch maybe what you thought it used to be? Is it quite quiet?
No, I think if you look at the average Army football match, there's a lot of swear words going on. There's a lot of dictating going on, and a hell of a lot of passion in there. And the game has changed a little bit.
Yeah, maybe it's just yeah. I just always feel like sometimes we'll be watching Arsenal playing, it's like something will happen. I'm like, is anyone going to say anything there? Like there's 3 or 4 bad errors. Like, but then they sort of But then maybe that's that socially the game's changed, but also life has changed, isn't it? So yeah.
You look at a lot of derbies don't have as many local players, and that it has a visual effect for us as supporters watching it. You do see the sort of pride and passion is just a little bit diluted, I think.
Yeah, I think the sort of crunching tackle in the rain and sort of getting the fans on side is that's a very rare sight these days, isn't it? Which I think when we see it, we get so you can't get enough of it. It will be all over Twitter, and it's just dying breed.
Last question for me, Gerwyn, is if we spoke to some of your players, what kind of coach would you say that you would hope that they would say you are?
Oh, that'd be tough. I'm a big fan of feedback, so I do welcome feedback, and I think I do know what type of coach I am because I seek feedback from players and from coaches and people around me. And I think what's clear, a lot of people say, is that I am truly passionate about the cause. And when I said about the comment about they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, and I think that's what they probably will feel, that this guy really cares about this team and he wants the best. And we've had comments even during this recording now about leaving no stones unturned, and that's something that I will do my best to leave nothing behind. And if you don't leave anything behind and you get beat in the last minute, I mean, this year just gone with the Army in the 23's, we got beat by the RAF with a 94th minute penalty. And if you lose like that, sometimes that's just how the cookie crumbles. But if you can honestly sit back and say that you did everything as much as you could, the preparation, everything, then I'm content with that. So they'd probably say that I'm passionate, I do care, and that. I have a very good relationship with the team. The players, all the players. I aim to get to know all the players. I want to know as much about them as I can, so I can understand how to get the best out of them. And that's my staff as well. And I think appreciating them as well. If they've done a great job, tell them. Tell them that you care about them. Tell them that they're great. Tell them that you value them. And that's certainly what I do. To be fair,
it's lovely, nice life lesson to end on. I think there, Gerwyn.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. That's been
thank you.
Yeah, really enjoyed it. Yeah, really enjoyed the chat. Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Brilliant. Cheers. All the best with the podcast, guys.
Thanks a lot, man. No,
cheers.
Take care.
Cheers.
Thank you everyone for listening in to that chat with Gerwyn. Remember, you can find us on all your social channels, HTO Football. Tune in next time to hear about our next competition, which is announced this Wednesday during the podcast. See you then.